Oh, hello everyone. It's Susie from Esoteric Trading Solutions. I hope you're all well. I hope you've been kind to yourself, living your life to the fullest, being kind to your family and friends, being kind to your animals, and being kind to people generally. This is a fairly long YouTube, so please go and get yourself a cup of coffee and just relax. You can turn me off if you get sick of it. This one's about RippleNet and Swift. There's been a lot of information about whether they're going to join forces, and I'm basically saying no. Swift needs Ripple, not the other way around. And is it possible for Swift to integrate or interoperate with RippleNet? And my attitude is Swift is like a horse and buggy trying to sit underneath or on top of the latest speedboat. So you can see it's it's like chalk and cheese as far as I'm concerned. So please, this is education only. I've got the obligatory disclaimer at the end. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you to buy or sell. I don't know your risk profile, your financial needs or anything like that. So hit that subscribe button, everyone. I'm learning how to market a bit more, advertise a bit more. And just want to just give just a plug to a fellow who I've got a lot of respect for. Who basically is doing a lot of charity work for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And we're just trying to find out, we're doing Kickstarter, which will be coming out in a week or so. We're trying to find out whether we can actually give some proceeds to St. Jude's through King Blue. And if that's the case, I hope so. But if we can't, I'll still do it personally anyway. I've got a $4,000 bet with someone that I put up, and I think we've found someone to do that, which is fantastic. But this is for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. They're looking at preventing catastrophic disease affecting children, and no child will be denied any sort of treatment based on race, religion, or financial ability of the family. I think it's in Memphis, and King Blue _ XRP does a fantastic job. And I really just, want to help these kids as much as I can. So please, if you can, give any sort of donation at all. You just never know when your own child is going to be, something's going to happen. So just shocking, these, children having cancers and all sorts of things. So please do give. There was a website, Bree, it's on XRP Tipbot and Coil, where you can give money, or you can directly give cryptocurrency or make cash payment. And it was in this story here. It's from World News about King Blue _ XRP, essentially a new milestone of 21,000 XRP. And I think now that the new target is either 25,000 or maybe 50. But please give generously. I support this. And if I can give more money, I certainly would. That's for sure. So please do. I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Also, I'll let you know about Kickstarter. We're doing cryptocurrency education on Kickstarter. It's only going to be $50. Sorry, we tried $50 US, but I think Kickstarter said we weren't allowed to do that or something. So it's going to be €45 or equivalent to 55. Or equivalent to $50 US. And the package is worth 150 US, and it's been put together by myself and a colleague of mine who's basically a rocket scientist on programming, language and programming skills and interfaces and interconnections between different risk management systems, credit risk management systems, and all sorts of things. She's a bit of a rocket scientist, and that's Liz. So let's just get on with the YouTube. I know this is going to be a long one, so apologies. But so let's talk about Swift. Swift, again, was formed. It's a very old institution. It was formed in 1972. The platform Swift is very old, and Swift stands for Society for the Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. And basically, it's a platform, a messaging platform. And I'll say that again, messaging platform, where companies and individuals send and receive money. They have, by all accounts, from what I've seen, about 11,000 customers in 200,000 countries. And these customers can be banks or financial institutions. Now, put this in perspective, there's about 48,000 banks globally in the world, so 11,000 financial institutions and banks is not a lot, really, since they've been around for so long. But again, SWIFT is an old legacy system, and we'll go into that. And this is like a technology YouTube today, because I had to look up some stuff and understand a bit of technology and speak to my colleague Liz about technology, because I didn't really know a lot about the processing, the new languages for programming, which is called JSON and those sort of things. So basically, SWIFT, their technology is a part of legacy code, which is old programming code, where their system was developed, as you know, back in 1973. And essentially, Mr. Garlinghouse, who was interviewed with Bloomberg, said SWIFT said not long ago they didn't see blockchain as a solution to correspondent banking. Effectively, Mr. Garlinghouse said we will literally, outsmart and outdo SWIFT. And I believe that wholeheartedly, basically, because again, SWIFT's systems are old, they're clunky, they've got real problems. And this YouTube will show the problems. And I've known that myself even years ago when I worked at ANZ Bank. There was, erroneous transactions that went through. Someone nearly got away with 100 million, and this year we've seen some erroneous transactions go through, to the Bank of Bangladesh, and they actually got away with 81 million US dollars, which is pretty crazy. Now that, my understanding is that would never happen with Ripple. It's pretty Ripple net. It's just about nearly impossible. But anyway, let's go forward. So if we look at this technology, the technology is slow, it's costly, it's expensive, and SWIFT have got a real problem with that, because the problem is they're just not going to compete with the likes of a Ripple. Okay, banks need efficient cross-border payments. Every time you do anything with a bank and you want to send foreign currency overseas, it costs you a fortune. You only have to do 20,000 Australian dollars and you're getting charged 2,000 if you're converting it to US dollars or anything else for that matter. Okay, so Mr. Garlinghouse from Ripple said that there's been rumours circulated about a potential tie between Ripple and SWIFT, but obviously denies it. He's basically saying on a day-to-day basis, in fact, we are taking over SWIFT. And what he means by that is we're not going to make a takeover of SWIFT, but our technology is just so much better than SWIFT. Why would we want to, get involved with SWIFT in terms of a takeover? That's pretty much the story. But you will see SWIFT is using Ripple's technology, and SWIFT will be paying Ripple for that technology. Ripple doesn't give away its technology for nothing. It costs millions and millions of dollars for banks to use Ripple's technology. SWIFT would be paying millions to Ripple to use their technology, and I'll show you that as we go through. So SWIFT is a client of Ripple's, not the other way around. I want to make that really clear. And there's no way that there would be mergers and acquisitions between the two. SWIFT need Ripple, it's not the other way around. Okay, SWIFT use Ripple's technology, and they pay Ripple for the use of that technology and the support on a day-to-day basis of that technology. So if we go to the next slide, SWIFT is a legacy code. It's an old system from the 1972, which is a long time ago. Gosh, even I was young then. Yeah, I was actually. I wasn't even a teenager yet. So the thing is with a legacy system or a legacy code, it's old code that's not actually used anymore. Okay, so the legacy code, it's just not used in the year 2018. And the problem with the legacy code is it can become entangled, and often it gets so tangled like spaghetti. The code itself, the programming code, has to be completely rewritten. Okay, the code itself has many problems and many bugs, and is just not pertinent to today's world that we live in, where we expect information to be delivered instantly and everything else. So why don't we expect our cash to be delivered instantly? And that's the problem that SWIFT have. The cash is not, sent and instantly we can settle on it. And This is the problem where Ripple can do this straight away. So effectively, within their protocol, they have old legacy systems that have to be written for today's environment. Now, today's environment, you've got hackers that can hack in to Swift's system, and that's happened. And it just happened this year. They can actually hack into Swift's system and change messaging codes and everything because the system is old and it's clunky and it's a horse and buggy. Okay, so what this legacy code, what needs to happen with this old programming legacy code is it needs to be extracted and it needs to be written again in proper current programming code where there's incredible protocol for mitigation and for them to limit their risks so that people can't hack their system. And the Swift system has been hacked many, many times. So the legacy code has to be written. The legacy database has to be written into a new database where the current code, which the banks are now using JSON, according to my expert colleague, they're using JSON to write proper programming code that has protocols and rules and systems in place to identify fraudulent activity, but also has layers. Now, with legacy code, you don't have layers within the system, which means you don't have rules based in the system that can highlight easily if there's an erroneous transaction. Okay, and that's the biggest problem. So what Swift has to do is basically get this old legacy code, programming code, rewritten into new code that can put in more rules and checks and compliance so that big deals that aren't, that don't fit the historical trend of, say, a particular client, they can highlight straight away within the system that there's a red flag, something's going on. Either way, that is a massive job and it's a massive rewrite. And at the same time, they have to keep two systems going and then reconcile them. So in other words, the old Swift legacy code has to keep going in its little area, and they have to write new code and test them and run them one by one. Okay, the systems run together and then make sure they're both outputting the same stuff, to put it bluntly and to put it easily. So if we go to the next slide, as I said, legacy code refers to an application source code that is no longer supported. Now this is really valid because you'll understand when I'm getting to a picture here, this is very valid because you'll understand why would Ripple want to take over Swift? Seriously, it just doesn't make sense when they use blockchain, the most advanced technology we've seen since the internet, and when they have the most advanced technology in terms of all cryptocurrency coins and tokens. That it just doesn't make sense. It's like Ripple going from the latest fastest speedboat or the latest fastest car or whatever, or the flying machine in the air, back to the horse and buggy. Fair income, it really is. And that's what Aussies say, fair income, when they like, come on, man, this is a joke, man. It's like pie in the sky stuff, fair income. Anyway, so legacy code, as I said, refers to unsupported operating systems, hardware, and formats. And often legacy code has to be converted to a modern software language and platform. And this all takes time and takes a lot of money, and those systems need to be run side by side, particularly when we're talking about the sort of monies that, Swift settle in and out. They just cannot get this wrong, okay? And yet we have seen in the past, there's been terrible malicious attacks, if you want to call it that, where it's cost, the client a lot of money, okay? So going forward, now I want you to look at this. This is where it gets a bit detailed and a bit difficult if you're a non-tech sort of programming person. But I want to make this really easy to understand. Swift uses crowd the TAS network gateway, and these guys are in charge of rewriting all their legacy code, all their old programming legacy code. Okay, to put it into new programming code that that actually can put more protocols and rules in place to make the system less riskier, to make their system more adaptable to identifying risks in the system. In other words, red flags in the system, i.e. transactions that don't look right. Okay, now let's just go through this, because what we've got here is we've got different departments, right? Payments, collections, treasury, and other departments. Just look at these as being apps or departments, right? If we go to this here, we've got application layers, right? Now, application adapter layers, with legacy code, you're unable to actually have layers, all right? That's why they need to go to the new processing programming language, where they can actually have layers, which put in more levels of layer, so that it's harder to basically to have an attack on the Swift network and put an erroneous transaction through. Okay, so an application adaptation layer pulls internal data from all these departments like Treasury to the middle system here. Okay, so say for example, this adaptation layer will pull internal data to the middle systems, being the business. Okay, if we look at the MQ driver, it's basically an IBM MQ driver, 1993, again old, and it outputs messages internally to the broker information, which is this grey here, okay? And we'll go through that. If you look at the SFTP driver, it's the security file transfer protocol file to another file, again, going to these files here, and we'll discuss that, okay? Now think about drivers, which is Tech Talk. In Tech Talk, they call them buses. What drivers do is they pick up all the information, like a bus stop. You're at the bus is coming, you're at the bus stop. They pick up all the information and deliver that information to somewhere. So what these drivers are doing are delivering all the information to SEPA. SFTP is delivering all the information to T2, whatever it is, FS here, DB, you get the idea, web here and here, right? So again, if we go to the SFTP driver, it's a security file transfer, protocol file transfer to another file, and that's going to T2, T2S, right? If we go to the DB server, it's the database server. Again, the driver is delivering internal information to an external, okay? And so forth and so on. If we come to this business service layer, we go right, the MQ driver, which is IBM's, output a message internal going to an external. SEPA is the European Payment System Compliance, okay? So Swift is making payments, receipts or payments to SEPA, which is the European Payment System Compliance. In other words, they make payments or receive payments in terms of specific payment or receipt protocol. And what I mean by protocol is rules. Again, if we look at the file transfer protocol for another file, grabbing internal information from these departments, again, going to SEPA or going to T2, T2S. T2, T2S is payments and receipts via the European Central Bank and settlements going into here. So this is all Europe, okay? All Europe, right here. If we go from, if we look at this next one, the FS driver, the file system driver, just like a bus, picks up all the information and delivers it somewhere, and the database driver picks up all the information, delivers it here to the payments and settlements via the European Central Bank, and the IP SCT. The IPSCT is the protocol that basically authenticates, authorizes, and makes sure that the data looks right. And confidentiality, of course, is very important. So it sort of tries to make sure the data looks right, IP is Internet Protocol Network, a communication network, and SCT tries to look at the transport of data on the network and tries to make sure that it's authenticated, authorized, and it looks right. Okay. So IBM, which is SCORE. Now SCORE is, what is it? SCORE is Solution for Compliance in a Regulated Environment. That's what SCORE stands for. So again, all this information is coming through, and you've got compliance layered on the top of all this information coming through. And then we go to, and I know this sounds a bit confusing, there's quite a bit here. Then we go to the drivers, which is the external bus sending out or receiving transactions, and they go external. So Ripple basically is sending out information, or it's coming in. EBEX the same, FileAct the same, Interact the same, driver, the bus, remember the bus, in and out, Fin, RNI, and RNI MS driver. So if we go to the network driver layers, and what I've got on the other chart here, if we go to the drivers, right, EBEX is electronic banking for international communications driver. Fin Actual Biz is messaging the interface from the back office. Interact Bus is looking at historical data trends and sets off alarms if something looks strange before it goes out. FinBus is there to improve performance and efficiency sending data. RNI, which is TAS Group again, sends data to European banks and back again. And the NRAMS driver is the message European banks. Now, the TAS network, which, you know, provides all this stuff, basically is a company that basically rewrites code and uses the old functionality and creates new functionality or programming to put more layers and more compliance in the system. So I know that's difficult, but if we go back to this, so a lot of these drivers, the bus is from the TAS group, and what they've pretty much tried to do is ensure that there are more compliance and protocols so that any information going out to the European Central Bank effectively has more compliance levels, more compliance layers, and that data that's going out, the messaging data for in or out, is actually got good compliance and hopefully picks up transactional errors or fraud, or whatever it might be. Now, Ripple in itself doesn't need, you know, anything else. All it needs is the dealer here in Treasury doing a ticket, putting it into their system, and out it goes, right? Now, what this tells me, just looking at this, is Swift is using Ripple to settle any deal, any foreign currency that doesn't go through the European banks or the European central banks, right? So all other payments, whether it be US dollars or, you know, through to America or Africa or whatever, or Australia, it would be using Ripple for that, because the rest, all these down here, SEPA, TS, all those are specific to the European Central Bank, okay? So Swift is using Ripple, okay? And they would be paying Ripple millions of dollars worth of technology fees, as well as support fees to Ripple. And I want to make that really clear. And I've needed this this chart to show you exactly, so that hopefully you'll understand that. So as I said, Swift need Ripple, not the other way around. Okay, so as I said, TAS Network Gateway, you can look up TAS, there you go. There are solutions payment networks, independent payment network. They're trying to find better ways for their clients so that they've got in-house installations that pick up compliance and everything else, and that it makes the system more efficient, okay? And basically they install, you know, a European central platform for, you know, managing domestic and global payments through the banks under the European Central umbrella, and to make things faster. But it's not as fast, of course, as RippleNet, So again, that's pretty much, it's communication standards and all this sort of business. So we'll just skip that. You get the general picture, right? So what does it mean? TAS Group obviously has helped to rewrite the legacy code of Swift, the old clunky legacy code that no one uses anymore. Okay, and different divisions all have interpayments coming through on receipts, and they all need to be connected to gateways or drivers, if you want to call it that. Now, with old legacy code, there's no application adaptation layers. This means if a transaction is formatted properly through the system, in other words, it might have certain, text code or certain ways you've got to put in the input in terms of numbers, it's going to go through no matter what, as long as the formatting of the transaction is done properly, and there's nothing to pick up whether that transaction is erroneous or not within Swift. Now, we saw that this year with an erroneous hacker who used malware to steal $81 million from Swift. 81 million, which is a lot of money. And they actually did it with 6 transactions. I think it's 5 transactions. They were able to get into the Swift system and transfer all this money, basically using some sort of malware within the Swift system, which then, and they did 5 transactions within the Swift system, 5, not 1, but 5, and got away with the money, $81 million, and then were able to write a program that erased their tracks within the Swift system, which is pretty amazing. Now, if you think about that, it just shows you how weak the Swift system is, and that's scary, man. That is seriously scary, because a hacker found out that they could get in there with the old legacy code and write something with new code, programming code, that overtook everything and basically could transact 5 transactions totaling 81 million. Now that is really, really scary, man. I tell you what, I wouldn't like to have my account there and they stole 81 million from me. So one of the people from Swift said, Swift is aware of a malware that aims to reduce financial institutions' ability to evidence fraudulent transactions on their local systems. I'll give that to you again. Swift is aware of a malware that aims to reduce financial institutions' abilities to evidence fraudulent transactions on their local system. Now that is scary, man. That is really frightening. I think that's an absolute joke, man, because that's just unbelievable. Wow. So if you look at their system, obviously the hackers, installed something into the server, the Swift server, the malware, did some sort of decryption or something. I don't know enough about technology, but identified something that exploits the Swift application, bypassed the validity checks within Oracle DLL. Then they were able to do, 5 transactions. The Swift message is sent to a printer, and then they were able to, do some other thing where they unwound everything they did, and left the police and everyone else scratching their head going, where the hell are we going to find this stuff, this money? So, it's pretty amazing. Investigators are trying to find this money, but I don't know whether they have. But I do remember when I was working at ANZ a long time ago, and this might be 15 years ago, a long time ago. I'm just amazed that things are still happening with Swift now. I remember working there, and the ANZ nearly lost 100 million in Aussie dollars. Might have been 20 years ago. Now that was a lot of money in those days. And it went through the Swift thing, and it got all processed and everything else as a transaction through Swift. No one picked it up. The system didn't pick it up, nothing. Because as I said before, with the legacy code, providing all the formatting's done properly within Swift, it doesn't have the compliance, to check up an erroneous deal. And the only reason this 100 million Aussie got picked up, because it was sent to the Middle East, And a teller saw this on a telex machine or something and scratched her head and thought, how do I process Aussie dollars? Because in the Middle East, they'd never experienced or had a problem, they'd never actually experienced where they had to actually process Aussie dollars. So she rang head office in Melbourne and asked, how do I process 100 million Aussie dollars? Through, one manager, a settlements manager or something. And the settlements manager said, we don't know anything about 100 million Aussie. And she said, well, I've got a payment here to process 100 million Aussie and I don't know how to do it. And that's how they found out this deal was erroneous. Now, if it wasn't for that teller that didn't know how to do that, whoever did the erroneous transaction would have got away with 100 million ANZ from ANZ Aussie dollars, which I find amazing. And the fact that that's still happening today after 20 years, it just shows you that SWIFT, in my book, I have to say it is an SHIT system. And that's scary in itself. So where are we up to? Crikey, I've got a lot of slides here. Okay, let me just have a look here. Wow, this is getting long. So if we go back to the application adapter layers, which was that second column, a layer in tech speak acts like a kind of barrier for data passing through, okay? So that it's like a barrier so that the data itself is actually checked properly, and they look at historical data and they look at everything just to see if there's something wrong or something different, right? But the problem with Swift, as I said before, it's legacy code, old programming code. In most legacy systems, it doesn't consist of these layers, these application adapter layers. And so therefore they've had to use a TAS group to get those applied more within their system with new programming code. And so the old legacy code, because you've had people come in time and time again and try to rewrite the programming communication within the system, there's just so much code there that it's like spaghetti. But there's no application layer to stop as a kind of barrier for transactions to be checked in terms of compliance or anything like that, or rules, right? Good rules or separation, if that makes sense, right? Now that is a real concern, okay? Swift have got real problems, no doubt. So let's just quickly go through this because I always do too much here, guys. So adding an application layer, it talks about domain infrastructure, volume, demand, represent, whatever. And basically the one I want to point out here is application layers contain commands, handlers, data transfer, but there's layers, right? There's layers and, there's basically some sort of compliance in those layers, okay? And, time stamps and all this sort of business, right? So, again, quickly go through that. We've gone through that. So it's basically a set of procedures. API is called, what was API again? Okay, is application programming interface. API is application programming interface, a set of rules, code, specifications that software programs can follow to communicate with each other. Okay, that's pretty much what it is, right? So they communicate with each other to grab information. So essentially, where two computers talk to each other, and it's supposed to make things quicker to get the data and extract the data and send the data out for settlement, okay? And then you've got URL codes as well, so to actually extract that data. So we won't go through much through that. So, okay, so when we've got API set up, it actually makes the requesting of the data quicker and the efficiency of the data quicker, so that at the end of it all, settlement payments can be made quicker. But it's not going to be as fast as Ripple, which is 1 to 3 seconds. It's too clunky, it's too old, and it's got to go through too much processing through the different layers of the system to actually get to the external of making a payment or receiving a payment. You see what I'm saying? So the system itself is so different to RippleNet, it's a joke. There is no way the Ripple would ever merge or integrate with Swift. It's whoever said that is just being silly about it. Okay, guys? What else we got? So there's limitations to what APIs can do, right? Severe limitations, right? They can get and request data from a server. They can post data. They can, you can revise something, put, or adds to an existing information, and you can delete. But that's it. There's no compliance checks. In other words, if this account, Bank of Melbourne, overdraws by 100 million, let's stop this transaction. If something goes out for any more than, 3 million, let's put a query on it. Let's check it out first before it goes out. So that's all they can do, which is sourcing the data efficiently, right? Again, with the old legacy code, it should be replaced by new code. And apparently, talking to my expert friend on this, the new banking code is now called JSON. There is other code, XML and Java, but apparently the main language now is JSON, which is the most advanced code and probably the most efficient code to get information from servers and from databases. So there is a real limit on what an API can do, given that Swift is using old code, okay? What else? So let's look at Ripple. And we know Ripple, right? And I just got some current news today, and I'll just put that up. Ripple basically is an amazing company, and apparently up until today, they've raised about 100 million. And the following list of investors are Google Ventures, Standard Chartered, Accenture, and Andreessen Horowitz, which basically is a private equity firm, very well known. As you know, Ripple's an interbank settlement protocol, but not just for interbank. It's for clients, it's for financial institutions, it's for corporates, it's for the world, it's for all of us. The other night I tried to transfer some VeChain from Bitfinex to my wallet, and I swear to God, and I do like VeChain, but it took, it must have taken an hour and a half. I'm not kidding, right? I do it with XRP. It takes, literally, if I do it from Uphold to something or vice versa, it takes about, seriously, less than a minute, not even a minute. So, again, Ripple's technology is for the world. It's for me, it's for you, it's for everyone, okay? So, they've put on another client. Now all these clients pay Ripple lots of money, okay, lots of money. Ripple is a very, very profitable business. CIMB, and these guys are the largest South Asian banking organization, and they utilize Ripple's technology. I don't know what capacity at the moment, whether they use it in terms of XRP or not, but they're going to use it for its speed spend remittance product, and that's awesome because that's in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And Ripple just keep putting on more and more and more and more clients, okay? They're pretty amazing. And this crowd are in the US, Hong Kong, Australia, and the ASEAN. So pretty amazing, guys, pretty amazing. So Ripple's technology, in short, and think about the old clunky Swift system with the old legacy code, the old programming code doesn't have enough layers to find out when a deal is erroneous or when it's fraud or whatever. Ripple's technology, in short, decentralized nodes, computers around the world, blockchain, you can't change transactions. These decentralized nodes basically, have a consensus mechanism where there's consensus, to make sure a transaction is valid. It's very difficult to have a malicious attack, a 51% malicious attack, because you literally have to have more than 51% of the nodes around the world control them, okay? Payments in seconds, thousands, thousands, and thousands. Within Ripple's technology, they have highly advanced compliance checkoffs, okay? So no transaction that is erroneous or fraudulent would, in my belief, get through. The compliance within the Ripple system would be so, top notch. Also, as I said, the nodes have a consensus algorithm, and it's on a consensus basis that things are let through. And to my understanding, Ripple's never had a fraudulent transaction, to my understanding, and they've never had a hack. Okay, we've heard of other cryptocurrency technologies that have had hacks that don't work, and they're still trading a lot higher than Ripple, right? Which is pretty stupid. Blockchain, as you know, can't be intercepted. It can't be changed. Someone like these Bangladesh guys or whoever they were couldn't write a program like they did with Swift, to intercept and to transfer money to their accounts, right? It's impossible with blockchain. So when you look at the technology, and this is my point, when you look at the technology, there is no way Swift would merge there's no way Ripple would merge with Swift. It just doesn't make sense from a technology aspect. Again, I've said this before, Ripple is a speedboat. It's the latest aerial machine, the latest rocket launch, or the latest rocket ship, or whatever you want to call it, going to the moon or going to Mars. And Swift is like the old horse and buggy. Seriously. Swift needs Ripple. Swift is dead in the water, man, because they're already using Ripple's technology, and eventually they will lose all their clients, because all Ripple have to do is keep charging them more and more and more for their technology every year. And basically Ripple's meeting Swift head on. As I said, there's 58,000 banks out there, let alone how many institutions and, corporations and whatever. And Swift's only got 11,000 of them anyway. It's not a lot. So really, as going back to Garlinghouse said, the technology that banks use today that Swift developed decades ago really hasn't evolved or kept up with the market. Okay, and even Swift admitted that there's problems within Swift where, a malicious attack can be made and a fraudulent transaction, or 6 or 5 fraudulent transactions can be made and they're not picked up. That is scary, man. But Swift, as Garlinghouse said, Swift did not said not long ago they didn't see blockchain as a solution to correspondent banking. I think Swift are pretty silly, to be perfectly honest with you. And honestly, Ripple's just going to literally be the top. Swift will go by the wayside, the way I see it. As I said, Swift needs Ripple, and that's all there is to it. Anyway, guys, I hope you get something out of this. This is for education only. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry it's so long, but there was quite a bit of detail there because I had to really understand programming myself to understand the two systems. And now that I've looked into this, I don't believe that there would ever be, there's an interconnection, yes, in terms of Swift needing Ripple's technology, but there's no way there'd be a merger and acquisition between Swift and Ripple. I mean, unless Swift was smart enough to try and buy Ripple, but I don't think, the price would be high enough. That's my my opinion. Anyway, education only, guys. Please do look after yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your family and friends. Be kind to your putty cats, your beautiful dogs, all your animals. Please be kind to people in the world and just make this a better place. Thank you, Susie. Thank you for listening. And sorry it was so long.